You are now tuned into the XYZ Connection, redefining the generational gap, hosted by Myckelle Williams, bringing you critical conversations impacting generations. Join us for real, raw, and relevant dialogue from a multi-generational perspective. Let's connect in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the XYZ Connection, guys. My name is Myckelle Williams, and we are bringing it to you real, raw, and relevant. From a multi-generational perspective, I love this show because it's all about just having those critical conversations that are bringing generations together. And we have some great guests today. Today is show 5. It is actually our final show of the season 1. So this has been a great season. I know you guys have loved it. I've heard your input and I've seen all the great conversations that you guys have been having, especially on our Facebook page too. You guys have been going really in on the XYZ Connection. It's a group page on Facebook and I've loved it. We have some great guests here, but today we're talking about let go, let God. That's the topic of our show today. And so I can't wait to introduce these great guests to you. So we're going to introduce our guests here. First, we have our Generation X guest, Nate Fowler. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Nate Fowler. Nate is a reluctant Generation Xer, a man of faith, a father, a budding author, sibling of 15 brothers and sisters. Wow, he's a business owner and a mentor. He's the possessor of a Bachelor of Science credentials and a big fan of learning. His vision is to serve the geriatric population of America by developing retirement communities for them. I love that. Welcome, Nate. And coming from Generation Y, we have Toya. Hello, Toya. How are you doing, girl?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
Yay. I am doing well. Thank you for asking, Toya. Toya is the director of Radical Women's Ministry, the women's ministry at World Changers Church International. She has mentored hundreds of women and teen girls through her ministry work there and through various speaking engagements, conferences, and other major events. Her influences go far beyond ministry. She is also the co-host of the Canton Jones Show on Praise 102.5 Atlanta. And she received training in the collegiate level of fashion design and merchandising from Bowder College in Buckhead, Georgia. And also she is a host of other gifts and talents that include event planning, wardrobe styling, and interior design. So welcome. And finally, we have Mr. Justin, yay, from Generation Z. That's that younger generation. He's bringing it. How are you doing today, Justin?
I'm blessed. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you. Let me tell everybody a little bit about you. You are known as Jonesy, and you're a professional dancer, now video game streamer. You're actively promoting mental health awareness on your social media page and is an activist in your community. Thank you so much. So I'm excited to talk to all three of you today. Our topic is going to be letting go, letting God. We have had an amazing season of shows. We've talked about love and mental health. We've talked about narcissism and the toxic connections. We've gone into love is a battlefield where if you're different and how opposites can maybe attract and red flags. And we've gone into so many things this season concerning toxic relationships. So this show is going to be dedicated to let's just say you are finally over it, you're done, and you've decided, I can't take it anymore. And it's time for me to go. A lot of people have trouble with that part of their decision because they decide, well, I want to leave, but then again, I love that person, maybe they could change, maybe, it's just me. And so I kind of want to talk to you guys about letting go because you all have had experience with letting go and finding the strength just to stay gone and not continue to go back and forth in that cycle of, I love you, I'm leaving, no, come back, and then I'm back again. So how did you guys navigate that? And also I want to talk about some things that are generational because I feel like older generations, they tended to stay in certain situations longer. And what is the difference between your generations as well when it comes to breaking up? And do you break up too easy in the younger generation? versus how they used to stick it out through thick and thin. And what does that mean? So we're going to talk about all that today, and I'm really, really excited to get into it. So I guess I want to ask anybody your experiences with toxic relationships. We can start with Nate. What is your experience with toxic relationships, Nate?
I lived a little while, so I have quite a few to choose from. But number one, I thank God that I had the opportunity to grow doing all the relationships that I had throughout the years, and become a better person, become a better me, learn more about myself, more so than what other people was doing to me. You know, what I realized through the years is that people who are hurting will hurt other people. Sometimes you just can't take it personally, some of the things that occur to you from somebody else's issues. So I've learned to be a lot more self-aware of what other people are dealing with in their own lives, in their own traumas that they went through in their younger years and as they get older, and try to be a little bit more mindful of where it is they're coming from. As far as the toxic relationships is concerned, when it comes to me, if I feel like that I'm being harmed in a situation greater than I'm being loved, then I start looking for means of ways to protect myself and maybe extract myself from that relationship.
That's interesting what you said about when you feel like you're being harmed more than you're being loved. I find that that's something that a lot of people experience in these relationships. The bad starts outweighing the good. You know, it's no more butterflies and rose petals. Now it's like thorns and glass that you're walking across. And so when it gets to that point, is it better to let go? So Toya, I want to ask you too, what is your experience with toxic situations?
Well, I've actually been on multiple sides of toxicity, meaning I've been in relationships that were toxic, and I've also been the toxic person in a relationship. It took some growing to be able to even admit that, you know, and then too, there's some situations where the relationship is not toxic, it just doesn't work. You know, it's just, you're just too different, or you're just always at odds, but it may not necessarily be a matter of toxicity per se. So for me, being in a toxic relationship and making decisions to leave is one of those things where, to Nate's point, when you realize there's more harm than good being brought to the situation, you're losing yourself, losing your confidence, losing your connection, losing just you're losing. Like, you're in a relationship, and a relationship is designed not to be perfect, but for two people to come together and to grow. And then you get in these scenarios where you're losing. Like, it's like a deficit. It's like a bank account. It's like withdrawal, you know, until you get into the red. And that's when, for me, I had to make a decision of, you know, I could stay here, you know, and try to figure out a way to force it and put a square peg into a round hole or whatever. I can do that. But at the end of the day, it's like, you have to love you first. You know, it's like, you have to love you enough to say, this is not good for me. And I'm not saying that that's an easy, even conclusion to come to, because you spend so much time justifying a lot of behavior, poor behavior. But when you do come to it, it's like, I have to fight for me first, you know? So that was the point that I got to. And when I was in a bad and toxic relationship.
I think that's really interesting, because a lot of times, and I love what you said about forcing it. I feel like a lot of times people tend to say, you know what, I got to make this work. I've invested time. I've invested energy. I'm not going to waste 10 years of my life that I spent with this person. And so they do try to force it.
You know, it's really rooted in fear. And nothing, no decision, no action, no relationship that's built and governed by fear will last. It can't. Like, fear is not a foundation to build upon. It's not a foundation to stay. Anything you're doing that's motivated by fear is always like the wrong thing. Fear of wasted time. Like you said, I invested 10 years, I invested 15 years. So now all that goes out. That's fear, because faith and love says there is no wasted experience. There is no wasted relationship. And so when you're outside of love and you're outside of God and you're outside of the plan of God, you're in fear. And so it's like, until you become courageous enough, and sometimes you have to work your courage up. It just doesn't show up. You have to build the courage up, build the faith up that I can do this. I can start over and I can have what I truly desire.
That I can say that's deep, because I've known a lot of women who are like, I need to be a ride or die chick. And if I'm not hanging in there, then I'm not a good woman. I feel like I've let him down because I didn't stick in through the thick and thin. But Jonesy, I definitely want to ask you a couple of questions right now about your experience. What is your experience? You're so young. You can't have, I know you haven't even had a long-term relationship yet. You're like 16.
That's not come
right?
for me. Stop. I'm 20. I'm 22.
Tell me your experience with toxic in relationships and letting go.
So many. But let me give you like a small example of like one relationship I had with this woman, like maybe like a year or two ago. So this woman, without giving out all of her business or mine, we were in a relationship, very new, right? We were like in between stages of like talking and like about to be officially dating. And I was totally cool with that. And we both agreed on, hey, I don't want to talk to anyone else. I want to only talk to you. And I was like, exclusive. I'm like, cool. Like that's the vibe. Later on, I found out that she was hooking up with men like in the club, but whenever she would go, and whenever we're home together, and like I'm like on my phone on Instagram, just scrolling. She's like, is that a girl? Is that a girl? Oh no, you gotta block her. Stuff like that, just small stuff.
So she had jealous tendencies, even though she was doing whatever she was doing.
Out here being nasty, and yes, and it later got like more like bad and serious. And to answer one of the questions that we said earlier is like, why do we stay? I truly believe in the Stockholm syndrome. Now, if you don't know what that is, when a victim is kidnapped by a person, the victim starts building up feelings towards that person who kidnapped them. It's what the mind does when it's like in a place of fear or panic, and it just creates a safe bond between that person. So like they never want to even leave the house. So a lot of people who are actually kidnapped in the world, like they actually stay with their kidnappers and be like have families and stuff. Like it never happens.
That is interesting, because I've heard that before, where certain people were kidnapped over years and they eventually felt the need to protect the kidnappers. So I've heard of the Stockholm syndrome. That's interesting. So you're saying that happens in relationships?
Yes, I totally believe 100% that happens, but not to the boy, not me. It's a lot of toxic energy. When it got to the point of, hey, I don't even want you being on social media. I don't want you posting. I don't want you doing this, that, the other. I'm like, whoa. Now you're getting into my business. And like, you're not going to tell me what to do with my business. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I was out here posting like, I don't know, like crazy pictures, like of my booty out or something like that, some crazy stuff. Okay. Maybe we can have a talk, but I'm not doing all that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I am in college, but I have a side hustle of social media and I get brand deals, et cetera, et cetera. But that person wanted to get in the way of that instead of supporting me. And it just didn't work out. And I said, look, I gotta go. I'm not going to stay in this toxic relationship.
So was it easy for you to go? I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. How is it when you have to get out? Is there not that hesitation because you say, well, maybe things can change? Did you just leave like that, or did it take a while for you to be able to get out?
Oh, it took me like maybe like 2 weeks of where I'm like, okay, look, we can work through it. After I saw that it wasn't going to work, after like 2 tries of trying to revive the relationship and get it to a nice place, I was like, okay, we're going to have to cut this off. It was a good, clean cut off, just like, Band-Aid to rip it off. And that was it.
You know what? I wish I had. I wish I had the strength to break up with somebody after 2 weeks and just be done with it. That is not everybody's story, but it's your story, and I'm glad that you're able to walk away so easy. Not everybody can do that, so hey, kudos. Anyone can answer this. I want to know like generational patterns, because we talk about the older generation sticking in there through thick and thin. They had marriages that lasted 50 years. Usually about 48 of those years were spent in violence and turmoil. And then they become little old people where they can't fight anymore. And they look, and everybody's like, oh, I admired that amazing relationship. But they went through so much agony to get to that point. Do you think that we give up too easy? Is it a thing now where we're fine with just walking away easy, and maybe we should stick it out through thick and thin as they used to do?
Definitely with my generation, we really be in and out. I see a lot of my friends and a lot of my acquaintances, I should say, they start something, and when they see one wrong thing, they really bounce. It's actually rare in my age group for them to be like, all right, look, let's sit down, let's talk about it. That's the vibe that I'm on. Like, let's sit down, talk about it, let's work through it. I know I did say I left that last relationship in 2 weeks in, but it was toxic. Okay, it was really toxic. But I really sit down and I talk about it. But a lot of people in my generation are kind of really in and out. Like, they don't even get past the talking stage.
So why do you think that is in your generation, where people don't have the patience? Do you think it has something to do with maybe the availability of so many people on social media, where we didn't have that back then? Or why is it that they're giving up quickly and able to move on to the next so easily?
Because we're all fast paced. I mean, look at TikTok. TikTok videos are only like 6 to 10 seconds long. Our attention spans are actually scientifically 6 to 10 seconds long. That's why TikTok has a big platform. So that's our attention span, and our relationship span is probably around the exact same time.
6 to 10 seconds.
I'm really outing my whole generation right now, but it's all right.
No, I mean, that's good. That's why we're here. I want to hear about your generational perspective. What about you, Toya? I know you're a little bit in the older, maybe 30s, and we got 26 to 30, 43 in your generation. So that's a little bit of a big gap there. There's a 20-year span within the millennials. So millennials, are they staying? Are they going? Is it easy for them to go? Is it harder than maybe this younger generation?
I think it's a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. I don't think we are staying as long as our parents, but we don't give up as quick as the younger generation. So we're definitely in the middle. I know a good, healthy, I know a good amount of people who are married, who have gone through different ups and downs in their relationships, and they are still in it, working through it, 10, 12, 15 years. Then I know other people, or I know like it was a season, it seemed like at one time, where everybody was getting divorced. It just seemed like the thing, like divorce was just like divorce. You know what I mean? It was just like rampant. And I don't know that it's a good or bad thing. People are more about self-care, self-love, your truth, what's right for you, identifying those different things in this generation more than the generation before me. It was kind of like, it's not about you. You know what I mean? You suck it up and you deal with it and you figure out how to make it work. Who cares if you're happy? Who cares if it's, whatever? You just figure it out, you stick it out. That's like my mom's generation. And then I think our generation came along and it's like, no, what if I'm not happy? You know what I'm saying? What if I don't want to be here anymore? It's just a different time. So it's a lot more factors, I think, than the generation before to consider than just, he's a hardworking man. He brings home the bacon. He makes money. Girl, you better shut up and just deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Just deal with it. And you got a good man and he works. He got 5 families on the side, but he works and he brings home, And so like our generation, like, no, that ain't cool. We're not cool with that. That's not okay.
So I noticed that there's more options now with staying. You know, women had to sometimes depend on their husbands too. You didn't have women that were working sometimes in the older generations. Were financially stuck there where they had to do what they had to do in order to maintain that family. But also, I know you're doing some things within the church, and the church also talks about like commitment. I was thinking of when Will and Jada Pinkett were like bad marriage for life. And then I thought, I used to teach a marriage ministry where it was called Married for Life. But I've also noticed that the church has an equal divorce rate as those outside of the church. So why do you think, how is commitment defined differently within the church than outside of the church?
For me, I think having been married before and in the whole church environment when I got married, there's like this thing of, it's just a lot of phoniness. That's the best way to say it. It's a lot of facade. So it's a lot of performance within the church. Even when I was dating, or even in dating, I feel like I said, especially after I got divorced, I wouldn't date anybody that goes to church with me ever again, like ever. Never. And most of it had a lot to do with, there's like this fake, there's just phony. You know what I'm saying? So you don't get the real person. I mean, that's in real dating too, but it's like extra in church. You have to get through the church layer, then like the other person layer before you get to the actual person. And so with that, I feel like it's kind of this thing of you have to uphold a certain image within church that everything is good. And if you're not praying, pray it through. And, if you get a divorce, you don't have faith. And if you get a divorce, then you don't trust God and you don't believe God for your husband. And so it's this pressure that no matter what's happening, you got to stick it out. And so I think the divorce rate is because, certain things you can only keep up a facade for so long. That only lasts for so long. And so especially in an intimate relationship, it's only so far you can go with, the church act, the church this and the church. That's only going to go so far because you have a real life and a real person you're going home with every single day.
Yes.
So, I don't think commitment in and of itself is different in or outside of the church. I just think our approach to it is different. And I think a lot of people are really deceived within the church. Like, you act like things aren't going on that are really going on, different things like that. So you have all those factors, and I feel like that contributes to making it hard for marriages within the church to stay together.
I think that's interesting because, like I said, I was in that ministry, and we saw so many leaders that struggled with pornography, that struggled with adultery, that struggled with so many things. And it always surprised me every time because I'm like, these people are elite. They're like at the top. And I was like, these people were all at the top of their game, as you would think within the church. But then there was so much guilt and underlying sense of pressure, I feel like, because when I wanted to leave my situation, it took me almost 10 years to actually walk away. 10 years after I decided I was done, I silently suffered. And I allowed myself to martyr, myself for the sake of my kids and my family and to have that image that I wanted to protect.
I listened to what my two compatriots said, and I honestly don't find a whole lot of difference in generations when it comes to the whole relational thing as far as toxicity is concerned. I'm sure when I was 22 years old, there was people my age who would say the same things, about me at that age. I might be thinking now. I just think sometimes we just evolve as people and we understand life on a different level and we see things on a different level because we experience some things. We deal with things based on, the experiences that we've gone through and the maturity that we have now. With that being said, when you look at the church, I think one of the things that happens even in the church as well as outside the church is we ask God to bring us to the wedding, but we need him to get through the life. And in that process, we stop practicing, or we stop giving effort every day. A lot of times people say, well, marriage is work, relationships is work, which is true, but I don't look at it as work. I think that's more of a negative connotation to it. I say that it just takes effort to be in a relationship with someone every day. And most of the time, divorce comes about because one of the parties wants to be more selfish than the other. And it gets to a point where somebody feels like, I got to be more about me than I am about this thing that we're in. And then a lot of times I don't think people continue to evolve in how they see what marriage is. The purpose, if you read the scriptures, the purpose of marriage is oneness. That's the purpose of marriage. So you have two separate personalities coming together to be one. There's always going to be friction in that process. So it's always a sacrificial sacrifice. There's a sacrifice that you give every day in order to be in harmony with the person that you're with. I just think the issues with relationships involve individual issues that you might have when you come into the relationship that the other party wasn't aware of, and it came to the surface as the years went on. And the other party is like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know you had these mental health issues. I didn't know you was an abuser. I didn't know that you had childhood trauma that you never dealt with. Because as Toya said, you put on the representative, you put on the facade, you made it look good in church, and everybody said, oh, they look good. They dressing alike, right. It's starting to look alike. But behind closed doors, there was a private hell that people were dealing with. I'm a big proponent of, even when you're married, and even if you're not in a crisis, if you will, that the person who was your premarital counselor continues to be your counselor throughout the relationship. And from time to time, you talk with them or you have dinner with them, and just to do self-examination on yourself, individualized and even collectively in a relationship. But that has to do with every generation. That's just not just one. That's everybody.
What types of situations, when we go back to toxic situations, guys, what types of situations should you leave from? So I know there's certain things that people say, stay forever, stay for life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what types of situations should you just absolutely, no matter what, you should leave from?
If somebody has broken the sacred trust of a relationship by, I'm not saying one time, and it's not a mistake if you cheat. It's a selfish act if you cheat. But if somebody did some infidelities and they continue to do infidelities, to me, that's putting more harm, that's making more harm to you than that person loves you. They're not showing you the love that you're showing them. There's not a reciprocal type of love being shown there. I think that's a deal breaker. Abandonment. Somebody just ups and leaves. If they leave or they just check out and they don't want to be in a relationship with you, then that's not peace anymore. That's no longer peace. And we've been called to peace. So that's no longer peace. Especially if you give an effort, you're trying to make it work and you're doing everything you can, it comes a time when, as we're talking about tonight, we let go and we let God, And to me, the other thing I'll say, if somebody's physically abusing you and you're in a position where, either you're going to hurt them or they really going to hurt you, then it's time to really start to decide, if it's necessary, if it's worth it to stay there. So sometimes we got to be selfish for our own health versus, being sacrificial for the relationship.
And I understand that. That's a good point. Abuse, any type of abandonment, those type of things are this more serious things where it's like time to go.
I gotta say, if someone puts their hands on you, oh, you gotta bounce. For me, I don't question that. Even if it's a woman hitting the man, you can still be abused as the man. A lot of people don't have a lot of attention on that or really don't like to talk about that. But if you get punched in the face, either gender, that's abuse. You need to go.
And the funny part, I grew up seeing that. My mother was that type of woman. And it was interesting because they always talked about men abusing women, but I grew up seeing women doing some of that as well. And in my mother's case, she would instigate some of those things. And it was always shocking, why is she doing this? It was interesting watching that dynamic of seeing the women. There are women who definitely are abusers too. It's not just a man thing. It's more prevalent with men, but you're right. There are both sides of that.
And this may be a generalization, but I'm going to say unfulfilled purpose. Like when you're in a relationship and your individual purpose is being stifled because of the relationship, like you're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to pursue things that you feel like God is telling you to do. Because of control or fear or some type of bondage, and your gifts are lying dormant and stagnant in a relationship. I feel like, to me, that's cause enough to leave.
Okay.
Because all of us were born for a purpose. We're born to do something. We're born to give back in a way. And I feel like if you're in a relationship, in a situation that's prohibiting you from doing the things that you're supposed to do, to me, I feel like at some point you're going to have to make a decision. And I feel like if it's causing death, the death of you, the death of your voice, the death of your dreams, the death of your purpose, I feel like that's cause enough to walk away.
And that's good. I like what you said about you can be dead inside, because I put together this program called the Heartwood Project. And the heartwood of a tree is the central part of the tree that all the food and nutrients and everything flow through in order to carry water and nutrients to the rest of the tree. But it's dead. And you can be dead inside. I kind of relate it to women. You can be dead inside, or men, and still going on, still laughing, still, carrying on your daily duties, but really in a position where you are empty and unhappy. And like we talked about earlier, when it gets to that point and you're more unhappy than you are happy, that's when it's time to start considering changes. But why do you think so many people have an issue with leaving the relationship? Because they know this. A lot of people know, hey, I need to go. This is a bad situation. I'm not happy. But why do you think the leaving part is so difficult?
I think one of the biggest problems that we have as humans is change. We hate change. Say, where do you get your coffee?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I make my coffee in my coffee pot every morning.
Oh, you better pop off. Okay.
Because I'm bougie like that. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. No.
I do go to Starbucks if you want to know, where I go outside of my house. I will occasionally visit a Starbucks.
Okay. And when you go to Starbucks, what do you usually get?
I like the caramel macchiatos with extra whipped cream.
Okay, you sound like me. Stop trying to copy me.
And sometimes I like an iced coffee. I've been kind of switching a little bit.
That's good. But you usually don't go out of that spectrum, do you?
No, for me, I get the same thing. Every restaurant I go to, every place. Yep. I'm one of those creatures of habit. So yeah, I try.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's like a creature of habit unless you really try to go out of your way to do that. But on instincts, we are creatures of habit, and we like the same thing every single time. We don't like change. So I think that's I think that kind of translates to our relationships. Hey, I've been in a relationship with you for a year. Things are bad. You're talking crazy to me. But single. I got to put in work effort again on somebody else. I don't know about that. So I'd rather just stay right here where I'm comfortable. If you try to stay comfortable in a situation, it doesn't usually bode too well. So change is good.
Well, I think that's interesting coming from your perspective. And I think the younger generation does like to constantly change and constantly reinvent itself. That's a part of the dynamic of the Generation Z, which I've noticed. You guys are constantly, social media is changing. You can't, I just got rid of my iPhone 7, you guys, and everybody was laughing at me what? I'm no, I don't need to go to the 8 and the 9 and the 11 and the 12. I'm fine. My phone turns on. I can talk and I can get on Facebook. Don't laugh, but that's just it. I'm like, I don't need to keep going and getting new stuff. And I think our older generation is more about just stability and kind of like enjoying things as they are and not trying to keep changing up and moving things to the next level. So that's a big difference between our generations.
I think there's something to be said for the comfort that you feel in what it is that you know. You be with somebody for a long time. Well, let me put it this way: if you become intimate with your partner, you have completed that oneness, that journey onto oneness with the other party. To separate yourself from that is difficult because there's not only a physical attachment, there's a spiritual and an emotional attachment as well. And if we want to break it down, when we look at divorce literally means ripping and tearing away. If you've been with somebody for a long period of time and you're connected to them in that oneness, when you separate yourself from them, it's almost like something died on you. And that's not easy to face because, for purposes of full disclosure here, when I got divorced, initially I felt numb. I didn't know how to feel. I was numb. But as time went on, there was a yearning and a longing for that person that I didn't necessarily desire to have, but it was there. So there is something to that spiritual connection that you have with somebody, and that coming together to be oneness, that God molds you together as one person as you come together. But when you separate from that person, there's a struggle with that. As humans, deep down in the recesses of our hearts, there was a reason why we married or got with that person, because we loved them initially. And a lot of times when it comes time to make that decision to leave, we seem to forget about the real bad things that they did to us, and always remember, well, when we used to go out together, well, when we used to sit down and laugh, all of those things seem to come to the surface to keep you from really pulling that trigger and making that decision, even though deep down, it's probably the best move, for you and for your overall well-being.
And too, you got those relationships where they go through that cycle of the honeymoon phase, and then the abuse phase, and then it turns into they're begging you back and they promise to do better, and they do better for a little while. And then, so you are believing that, you're wanting to trust in that because you've put time and energy in.
I think the fear of being alone is real. The fear of being by yourself is real. Nobody likes a cold bed. Keeping it 100. Nobody likes a cold bed. Nobody likes a cold house. Nobody likes a cold car. Some people have issues just going to the movies by themselves, going out to eat by themselves. Some people have an issue with silence, period. Just being in a space where you can hear your own thoughts, where you're silent and present with yourself. A lot of people don't know how to do that. And it's a fear of being alone, being lonely. Now, of course, being alone doesn't mean that you have to be lonely. But when there is, to Nate's point, that ripping and tearing away of a relationship, you live long enough and you know pretty much how that's going to go. There's going to be a time and season where you're pretty much going to be miserable. That's part of the healing. That's part of the separation. That's part of the tearing. And a lot of times you just don't want to go through it. So it's like, I'd rather just keep somebody, at least somebody is better than nobody. Because that time by yourself, I remember after I, got divorced, that first year, I'd say, was like culture shock, coming home to by yourself. I got a flat tire and I like literally broke down in major tears getting a flat tire because I realized I didn't have anyone to call, and it's just like that fear of making it by yourself. Can I do this by myself? Can I support myself financially? Can I take care of myself? Can I protect myself if something were to happen? All those things keep you like, let me just hold on. You know what I mean? Because this might be the best it's going to get for me.
Yeah, I noticed one of my things, and it's a little thing. It's not a huge thing, but just the trash. I don't like taking the trash out, and I hate being like, I don't have nobody to take this trash out. So it's the little bitty things that you're comfortable with in a relationship that suddenly aren't there. So I can understand how some people are like, oh, I hate this. Like, I need that extra person, to help. So they think, well, maybe next time it won't be so bad. So I get that. But when we talk about letting go, so now I want to get into that part. We talked about like the signs and what are some things that should cause us to let go. But when you are actually, you've made the decision, I'm out, I'm done, what are some of the steps you need to take to ensure that you don't continue to go back? Just what are some steps for letting go?
The main source for me to let go was focus on myself, on my journey. I personally believe that I'm called by God to preach the masses about mental health and just making it easier on this earth, because on this earth you have a lot of trials and tribulations coming your way. If it hasn't hit you yet, it's about to hit. So I just want to make it easier on everybody. That's why I'm a social media influencer. And when I was getting out of that toxic relationship, I'm like, man, like I'm thinking about her all the time. I'm not even thinking about myself. I sat down and prayed with God. I'm like, yo, my G, what do I do? And then he just told me, yo, focus on yourself. And what did I tell you before you got into this relationship? And I was like, dang, you're right. I've been neglecting my journey. So I just focused on what I had to do and my purpose in life. And it just helped it become a lot more easier for me.
I love how you have those personal conversations with God where you guys talk slang to each other. And just...
Oh, yeah. He's my best friend. He's my dad. He's my best friend. We have to have these type of talks because I'm like, all right, my God, like, what am I doing? And he's like, I don't know, but you need to get back on track.
So the first step you feel like is to focus, maybe focusing on your purpose or focusing on your goals. Maybe that's something that can help you.
I think anytime you make any major decision, you have to place boundaries around your decision. Mm-hmm. I'm making this decision to let go and walk away. I need to create boundaries to protect my decision. So it may be changing your number. It may be blocking on social media or on the phone so there's no access, or denying access in different ways if you're allowed to. There are situations where people have kids and different things like that, but controlling the things that you can control and setting boundaries around your decision. I think, Nate, you spoke to this earlier, just how when people leave or we leave situations, we romanticize the good times. And so we romanticize we just blow it up. And it's just like, he took you out one time. It's like, I remember when we used to go out. And it's like, y'all went out like once. But, in the breakup, you magnify it as if it was every day, as if you romanticize certain things. I think when you continue to give people access to you after you said you let go, it kind of falls into the romanticism very easily. So you remember the good times, you remember the conversation, but then you forget, well, there's also a reason you're walking away,
That's true.
And so it's like creating boundaries around your decision, to make the transition easier. And so we can look at that transition of letting go, and you set those boundaries and you understand it's okay to feel pain. It's okay for it to hurt. That doesn't mean you have to go back.
I absolutely love what you just said, because I've noticed that social media gives us more access to those people. So you may be like, I'm out, but then you can go look at their page. You can go sneak and see what they're doing. They're constantly, you're liking they're liking your stuff or trying to get in a little bit with you or talking to your friends, and you see them come across. So it's kind of difficult to set boundaries in this day and age unless you completely block. What I've noticed is just, you have to go cold turkey with some people. When you close the door, do not leave a crack. Do not leave a crack, because they will slither their way back in through that crack. People do not like to do not like to have any sort of discomfort or pain. They just do not want to deal with it. Nowadays, you have people, they're using drugs to self-medicate because they don't want to feel any type of hurt, discomfort, or pain. So a lot of times we self-medicate and do all these things, and in actuality, we're delaying our healing by doing those things.
I'm a big fan of the self-talk. And in the self-talk, we need to be intentional about what it is we're talking to ourselves about. And one of those things is trying to be fast to forgive ourselves. Because a lot of times in a breakup, one of the main things that keep us in that frame of feeling some sort of way about what happened is we feel guilty, whether it was our fault or not. And if we forgive ourselves for what happened, then we'll be in a position to forgive the other person, because that's ultimately allows you to move on, being able to forgive the other person. And to me, forgiveness is foregoing your right to punish the other person for what they did to you, if they did anything to you. So to me, if I get to a place where I'm forgiving myself because maybe I didn't do anything wrong, and I felt like, well, I'm feeling this guilt, but why am I feeling guilty? Because I didn't do anything wrong to bring about this, or maybe I did do something wrong to bring about this, but I got to get to a place where I can't change it now. So now that I've forgiven myself, I have to look at the other party and either grace them or forgive them. And in that process, it allows you to move beyond the pain and hurt. It's still going to be there, but it doesn't have to be there as long. You know how they say it's okay to visit the past, but don't live there. We have to move there. It's a process. Processing is in motion, and it's the problem is when we get stuck in a place thinking, rehashing all that stuff that we used to do with that person, we're stuck and we're not healing.
I like what you said about you don't have to live there. And that's what a lot of people do. They stay stuck in pain, and it's really difficult for them to move forward. But I do want to touch on what you said about forgiveness. I've noticed that even when I was in the church a lot, they always talked about forgiveness in a way that it made it seem like you had to deal with the situation. Hey, ask for forgiveness 70 times 7. He hit you 70 times, and that 71st, you got to keep, forgiving, because Jesus said forgive 70 times, and it always made it seem like no matter what, I had to forgive. Does forgiving mean that you continue on in the relationship, or can you forgive someone and not want to have anything else to do with them?
You can definitely forgive somebody for them either doing you wrong, or maybe it was a mutual type of thing. You did each other wrong. You can still forgive that person and still be like, hey, I forgive you. All is well between us, but there is no more us. I just want to let you know I do not want any more relations with you. I'm probably going to block you on every single thing of social media that I have, but I forgive you, because a lot of people, I guess, when they break up, they have a lot of hate or resentment towards the person. And for me personally, in the Bible, it says, if you hate someone, that's equivalent to murder. You know what I'm saying? I don't look good in orange. I ain't going to murder anybody, go to prison, no heavenly prison for the brother. Can't do it. So I always forgive anyone who does me wrong, but I will tell them to their face. And definitely to the face. I'll be like, hey, I don't want nothing more to do with you, but I forgive you.
You know what? I think that the younger generation can set boundaries easier, maybe. I don't know, because it seems like you guys are like, hey, I'm done. And some of you guys can walk away a lot easier than a little older generation.
Forgiveness is an inside job. It has nothing to do with physical proximity at all, which is why somebody may have passed and wronged you, and you can still forgive them, even if they're not physically next to you or physically present in your life, still alive, may have lost contact, but you still hold this ought or this unforgiveness. Forgiveness is an inside job. It has nothing to do with are we staying together. It has everything to do with the position and the conditioning of your heart, and your heart being at a position of releasing people. Nate said this, you acquitting people, letting people go free, not holding people in bondage to their sins, to their mishaps, to their wrongdoings, anything like that. And the Bible talks about, how can you, we go to God and we want to be forgiven of all types of things all the time, but yet we hold each other in unforgiveness, and we hold each other in captivity in our minds and in our hearts. We're holding that person captive. I can't let you go. I can't let you think that this is right. I can't let you think you got away with this, and you're holding this person captive. And forgiveness actually means to acquit somebody of all charges and release them of the debt that you feel like they owe you. Because when you're, we've heard this and we understand, when you hold unforgiveness towards somebody, you're being harmed. If in your heart It's taking root in your heart. It's stopping up your progress, not theirs. Most times they like have moved on, they chilling, kicking it at the beach, legs kicked up, getting a tan, and you here sad and depressed, thinking you're hurting somebody by holding bitterness and aught in your heart. And forgiveness is an inside job. I can forgive you and also release you, and also pray for you and bid you peace in your next endeavor, and forgive you and let you go and let you walk free. And I be free. I can forgive you and free myself as well. That's the biggest thing. Like you forgive and you free yourself. And I don't have to be with you to forgive you. I can release you and the relationship and let you go and be great somewhere else and feel in my heart, I'm not mad.
I love that. I read a book called Total Forgiveness by R.T. Kendall, and we actually had it for a book club meeting. But one thing he did say is that total forgiveness, part of that is that when you can actually pray for the person to be blessed with sincerity, when you actually pray for that person and say, I pray, maybe not, it's not gonna be with me, but I do pray that you have an amazing life and that you're able to move on and move forward. And you really mean it in your heart without animosity or malice or, that twinge of, I hope things go wrong for the rest of your life. I hope you never find success. That's not forgiveness. You're still holding something there. So
we need to do our own self-care after we break up with somebody. We need to make sure that we're back on the path, following the purpose that God has set for us when we came here as individuals. Once we're okay in our singleness, then we can be in a better position to be okay in a relationship. So the forgiveness is an accelerant to help you get to a place of healing. The void outside of the person that, who harms you, but it allows you to be a better you. Definitely you should learn from what happened, but forgiveness should be something that we see as a bosom buddy that we hold close to us for our own self-care.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. And what are some of the resources? Let's just say you decided to leave, you're gone. What are some of the things that can be used as resources to help with that inner healing, to be able to move forward?
To be honest, I ain't have no resources.
Wow, okay.
I ain't read no books. I ain't listen to nobody's special message. It was just the commitment to the journey and commitment to healing. And whatever that looked like on any given day. Like some days it looked like silence, quiet. Some weeks it looked like that. A lot of times I couldn't even pray for myself. I didn't have the strength or the desire to. I didn't have the desire to read the word, get before God. I ain't want to do none of that. Like, I just want to whatever I was going through, I was mad, hurt, angry. But always in the deepest part of me was trust and was faith that there's another side. You're going to get to the other side. I wish I had a resource, but I don't.
Wow. Okay. So this was inner work that you did. Not everybody goes to like a counselor or, a mentor, but some people have to work that out on their own, and you were able to break free by the little things that you did. Did you have any specific, I know you say you didn't do a program or anything, but was there something that helped you the most within your life and your journey, in that part of your journey, to be able to heal?
I think authentic relationships, friends, family, having people around you that really love you and support you. So when you don't have the strength and you're pushing through, you have people kind of pushing with you and holding space for you, holding the space around you while you grieve and while you heal. That's probably really was the biggest thing. It just was very raw. My healing process was so raw. By that time, I was questioning everything, like faith and everybody and every relationship, and I lost trust and everything. And so I was at that low point. It's really hard. You have to be a very special kind of person to be like at a low hard point in life, and you're reading and you're this. I admire people like that. I wasn't able to do that, but God is so faithful. He's so faithful that even in my inability to move, to think, to read, to pray, he says, Jesus is forever on his right hand making intercession for us. So even when we can't pray for ourselves, Jesus and other intercessors are praying. And so I felt that. I felt that strength from people around me and just God himself. But resources, I didn't have any at that time.
Yeah, and like you said, those relationships could have been your resource. I love how you said you got a support team around you, and even when you were at your weakest. And one other thing I wanted to point out about what you said, the grieving. We have to understand that there is a grief process that follows the breakup of a relationship, in particularly a marriage. I've heard studies that say that divorce has a similar effect on you as a death. It is like a death. It's a death of your dreams. It's a death of the goals that you may have had together, the plans, what you perceive marriage to be. It is a death of a lot of things, and people have to understand you have to take that time to grieve, just like you would a loved one that died, because it's that serious of a feeling, and it's almost similar.
So it is a death. It definitely is a death. There's a deep grieving that you go through, even if, again, it really doesn't have anything to do with who's at fault or not. It has everything to do with the sanctity of what the relationship, is about. So it is definitely a death. But I'm a big proponent of having a support system around you, a good support system around you, because when you're emotionally charged, one of the things that I think our spirit wants to do, our soulish self wants to do, is we want to release that which is charged us. Mm-hmm. All we know is there's something within us that's really, really hurting, that's really, really anxious. We feel that anxiousness and that anxiety within us, and we just need to go. And Toya talked about the journaling. The point that I want to make here is that I think the best thing to do is to communicate in whatever capacity that is, whether it's writing, whether it's self-talk, whether it's getting amongst someone that's a parent or an older mentor, or someone who you feel real safe with, conversing with about what it is that you're going through. At those times, all you really need is an ear. Even if you're writing, you're writing it because you want, God, you see what I'm writing, or you're speaking it because you want somebody to listen to what it is that you're dealing with. One time in particular, there was a guy who was an older gentleman, and he was a friend of mine, and I was dealing with a situation, in my marriage, and I felt like it was this big weight on my shoulders, and something happened in a relationship. For the purpose of time here, I went to him and I told him about it, and he said, "Isn't God good?" So I didn't understand what he meant, because at the time I'm in anguish, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, and I just really needed to talk to somebody about it. He said, "Isn't God good?" And then he explained himself. He said, "See, God is good because he allowed you to come talk to me about what it is that you're dealing with. And in the process of you talking to me about what it is you're dealing with, you're able to take what's on your back, put it in front of you, and now you can steer it. You're in control of what was on your back, what was holding you down, what was a weight. You're in control of it now, because now you're steering it, because now you're able to get it off of you." And I never forgot that. Because I think that's transcendent to many different facets of life. But in purpose of what we're talking about as far as relationships were concerned, that helped me deal with the issue a lot better.
Justin, I also want to hear your thought on, just that last step, that final step. You're working now closely with mental health, and part of breaking up is going possibly through a depression. We talked about depression as being a mental health issue. I was pretty surprised about that, because I didn't even know that anxiety and depression were diagnosed as mental health issues too. So when you go through that depression, when you're going through that grief, what type of resources do you see as something that can get somebody through that particular time in their life so that they can get that healing?
One thing is the first thing that you got to do, you got to let those emotions out. You need to take a couple of days. I'm talking like 3 at most. You just need to cry. Like, you just need to straight up cry. Sometimes you just have to get all those emotions out. So like when you're done with that grieving process, it's important to be done right then and there after you get all your emotions out. Because if you stay there, that's where the devil or the enemy takes place. That's where he starts working. So after those 3 days of like grieving and crying and all that, you need to cut it. You need to be like, all right, look, I need to focus. One big thing to do is when you're going through the breakup and it leads to depression or anxiety, you need to one, do some type of workout. You might not be into it. You might not be like, oh, I'm not fit. Oh, I can't do this. No. Any workout works. I'm telling you, because once you work out, endorphins start forming in your brain, and those endorphins break down stress. After all that stress is broken down, you feel a lot better. I remember when I got out of that toxic relationship, in the gym every day, every single day.
How you worked out the hand thing you just did?
Yep, just like that. I'm telling you, it really does help. That's one of the big sources that I can really recommend to everyone here watching is you gotta work out. And I definitely recommend that you talk to your mentors. If you don't have a mentor, you go to YouTube. YouTube is a mentor. I kid you not. Look up ways say YouTube, how do I stop being depressed? Millions of videos. And I've done that mad times. And I tell you what, I've gotten so many tips that I can always refer back to when I looked that up when I was like 16. And I'm like, oh, if I'm feeling depressed, no. Just go back to this and then I'm good. Like, even a lot of people will say like, oh, I can't find a mentor. Like, I don't have a pastor like you do. I'm like, bro, you got the internet. The internet is made to connect. So connect with people that you've never met before. Go on YouTube and you'll find something to help you out.
That's awesome. I love that advice, you guys. You guys had so many great things to say. I think this was really crucial. I mean, there's certain people that are even on our Facebook page and they're stuck in certain situations and they're looking for ways out. So I think this show will help them a lot. I know that when I left my situation, because I was married over 20 years, so this was not something I took lightly in leaving. But when I left my situation, I started a program called SOAR, and it stands for Surviving, Overcoming, and Rebuilding, because I had so many women that came to me and said, well, how did you do it? Because I'm stuck and I need to get out and I'm going through this emotional turmoil trying to leave. And so what I did was I wrote the 10 things that, because, everybody watched me on Facebook kind of growing, and I wrote the 10 things that I did out, and I'm going to turn that into a some sort of internet class or Zoom, because I think it would be great for other people to learn how to fully let go. But one of the things I did that I really found helpful was I started a bucket list. I was like, I don't need to wait till I'm about to die before, I start to live. And I wrote a bucket list of 10 items. They were attainable items. I didn't write like, hey, I'm going to climb the top of the Eiffel Tower by next month. That's unattainable. But what I did was do 10 attainable things. Like Toya was talking about going to the movies by yourself. Like, hey, I'm going to go to a movie and dinner by myself. That could have been one of my bucket list items, because I hadn't done that. Or, I'm going to go on a road trip by myself, a road trip to one other state. That's a great thing. I'm going to go to this shooting range and then buy a gun. That was actually one of my bucket lists. I just bought my guns. But then little things like that. I want to go skydiving. And start working on that list. Number one, that takes the focus off of what you're actually going through, and it turns it off of you. Another good thing is volunteering. Whenever you're helping someone else, you can go to grief. You can become a grief counselor, because whenever you are helping someone else, it totally turns the focus off of you. Just some sort of volunteer work. I don't care if it's once a week feeding people. That takes the focus off, because it makes your issues seem so much less important. Your little breakup could be a lot less important when you're looking at it from the standpoint of this child. You're at a hospital and you're watching a family have to say goodbye to their child, you know. So things like that can actually start moving the focus off us. And then the bucket list was things that I just felt like I could do and grow myself. And I started writing how I felt, what it inspired me, what did it teach me about myself. And that's how I started to grow. So things like that were important for me to let go. So I loved the advice we gave here. And before we leave, I just want all of you to say one thing to that woman who may be trapped in a desperate situation. One last piece of advice on letting go from each of you. And we'll start with Nate. If you could talk to that one lady who's like, okay, at the end of all this, how do I let go and walk away? What's the one piece of advice you'd give?
Number one, don't make a decision like that without praying about it first. And, seeking God's face. What you're looking for in your prayers is peace. You want to feel that peace from Him if He's sanctioning the move that you're about to make. Number two, don't be emotional about your decision. Think it all through. Think it all through, and be prepared for whatever the fallout is going to be.
You can do it. You got this. You got it. Like, really, the Lord will never put more on you than you can bear. You're capable of handling it, and you have everything in you, every resource, all wisdom, all knowledge, and all understanding, all ability, alive and living on the inside. It's accessible to you. And like when God talks about His strength is made perfect in our weakness, that's real. Like whenever you're at your weakest and you feel like, I do not have the strength to do this, His strength is made strong when we're at our weakest. It's almost more advantageous that we're weak because we get the strength of His strength in our weak points. You can do it. You have it. Like there is another side. There's life to be lived. Happiness, joy, it exists. It's real. And sometimes we get so stuck in thinking this is it. Like this is the happiest I'm going to be. This is the most money I'm going to have. This is the highest level my relationship is going to reach. I'm not going to get anything better. And that's a lie. It's an illusion. It's deceit. It's not true. Happiness awaits you. The life you desire awaits you. You can do it. As hard as it may be, as scary as it may be, you can do it. And there is love, joy, peace, wholeness, wisdom on the other side.
Hey, girl, let me tell you. I'm going to tell you how to get out of your toxic relationship and also look for the next one. So to get out, imagine that you have a daughter or a son. Would you want them going through the same trials and tribulations that you're going through? Would you want them to put up with the exact same thing? Probably not. Probably not. Y'all didn't hear me in the back. Probably not.
Amen.
And yeah, amen. Thank you. So if you don't want that to happen, then you know what to do. You already heard them. You hear me. You know what to do. And I'm going to tell you how to look for the next one. Don't look. Just let it come. Just let it happen to you. I stopped looking, and then God blessed me with something that I wasn't even ready for. I said, "Oh, word, say less." But it all comes together when you just stop looking and stop worrying about it. Like, just focus on yourself. Try to make yourself the best that you can be, and I promise it's all just gonna fall into place. Like, what's that old game, Tetris? Tetra? I don't know what it's called.
Tetris.
There you go. Tetris. I don't know. I'm Generation Z. I don't know. But I've seen videos. Yeah.
I love that. So, just focus on you. Don't look for the next relationship. I love all the little snippets of advice we got. And the best part about that was when you said, what would you tell your friend, your mother, your daughter, if she asked you for the same advice? If you had a best friend that was going through the same situation you're going through, what would you tell her? And be your own best friend. I mean, why is it so hard for you to want that great, amazing life for yourself that you want for others, why can't you give yourself that same advice and stick to it? So I love that what you said, and you guys are awesome. I really appreciate, everything, the whole just coming together and being a part of this show. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Toya. And thank you, Justin. I really think you guys were just amazing tonight. And you gave a lot of wisdom from every generation. And I'm going to do a little synopsis at the end once you guys are off, just kind of talking about how you guys connected and how the generations came together as well. And then you guys make sure you like and share everything. If you love this show, share it, get your friends involved, get on our Facebook page as well. But I'm so happy this season is wrapped up and you guys are awesome. And thank you so much for being a part of the first season of the XYZ Connection. I loved it. I had a blast. Thank you so much. And I'm going to have a little bit of a synopsis, just kind of talking and overviewing how I felt and doing a reflection starting now.
Thank you for listening. Let's bridge the gap. Click, comment, share, subscribe. Visit our website on www.thexyzconnection.com. Join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/the XYZ Connection. Stay tuned for next week's episode of the XYZ Connection. Critical conversations impacting generations.
Man, that was a great show. I am so thankful to Nate, to Toya, and to Justin for just coming and giving some great insight into how they felt about love and relationships and toxicity and letting go. And we had some great tidbits, didn't we? It was like we were able to really see the steps towards letting go of the past. I loved the part about just not allowing guilt to eat you alive. I loved that forgiveness is an inner work. There were so many things about that I loved. I loved the tips that they had on just kind of talking to yourself and pretending you're your own best girlfriend. So all those things and more. Now, if you have had trouble letting go of the past, there's so many resources. You can reach out to us at the XYZconnection.com for some of the resources we'll post into our page so that you're able to get some help on your own as well if you find it trouble to let go. Also, I really appreciate the fact that we have a great group of people on our Facebook page that get together and talk about these things as well daily. So if you are on Facebook, go to facebook.com/groups/the XYZ Connection and join our discussion group as well, because we'll get deeper and deeper into this. And if you've been watching this, keep talking. Go to the comments, like, click, share, and talk about it with your friends as well. How do you get out of toxic situations, and what have you found is the best way to heal? I'd love to hear your input as well. So I'm going to get out of here, but thank you so much for listening. I had a great first season. Hey, it's over. And we're going to get into next season where we're going to talk about healing and moving forward as well. So there's a lot to cover and so many things I want you to be a part of. And thank you for joining me and being a part of this journey this season. It has been amazing for me as well as I hope it was for you. So join me next time and let's continue to connect, guys. Have a great night.